Um, Good morning once again, participants. Welcome back to the session 8. Now we are going to listen the topic on wealth tech, digital transformation of investment and wealth management, handled by Mr. Austin, CEO, EduCentral, an online educational portal. He is an alumnus of IIM Bangalore, and I'm happy to be honored to introduce our chief guest, Mr. Austin, PM, CEO, EduCentral, an online educational portal, and he is an alumnus of IIM Bangalore with more than 2 decades of experience in areas of banking and financial services, internet-based technologies, and education. His financial service experiences includes stints at State Bank of India and the Tata Group. He set up carstreet.com, India's first auto website for SIFI. He was the founder and CEO of India's first personal finance fintech startup, paisapower.com, funded by ICICI Ventures. He is also a conference speaker and visiting faculty to several well-known business schools. His areas of expertise include fintech, blockchain, business analytics, machine learning and artificial intelligence, digital marketing, e-business, and online education. Sir, we are eagerly waiting to hear from you, especially this buzzwords like blockchains, machine learning, and these online platforms, etc. Sir, now the floor is handed over to you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Austin, sir, Austin, sir, there is no fintech session without Austin, sir.
Oh.
So, so we have defined it. We have defined it that way, and
Okay,
all our audience participants will also accept that.
Sir, our participants they are very much interactive, and they keep on asking questions, and they're making the sessions lively.
Excellent. Okay.
So we hope the same continue here as well.
Hopefully, yeah. Okay. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Dr. Kavita, thank you so much, and welcome to all the participants. Now, I'm sure you probably heard already something about blockchain and machine learning and AI, etc. So I had a sneak peek in the previous session about CBDCs. Okay, it's one of my favorite topics too, right? Okay, so this session, I'm going to cover what is the impact of emerging technologies such as machine learning, AI, blockchain, cloud computing, and the entire thing, the entire platform, the digital platform. How are they affecting the banking and financial services sector? But then in this session, we are going to look at investments and wealth management. Okay. Now, since time is not, really, you don't have too much time. So what we are going to do is to move forward pretty fast. And then, my request to the participants is that stop me whenever, you need to. And then so that we can, clarify things as we go along. You don't have to wait till, at the end of the session to ask questions. Otherwise you'll forget what questions you had, right? Okay. So, wealth tech or investment tech, as some people call it, consists of retail wealth management as well as corporate investments and things like that. And we're also going to talk about wealth management using robo-advisory services, etc. So let me share the screen so that we can get started, right?
Oh. So ये bottom of the pyramid में दिया हुआ है. So funny, like I don't know.
Vivek, sir, Dr. Vivek.
I couldn't understand why, like when we talk about challenging and opportunities.
People always multitask. That's what I love.
उसके अंदर they're given specifically portals, 5 models and challenges for marketing.
Can we mute?
Logic ही नहीं समझ में आया.
I know.
Yeah, I have muted him. Yes.
Okay, great. Okay. So I think, people are good at multitasking, right? Okay. So what we are going to do in the session is to demystify what is known as wealth tech. So as I told you before, wealth tech is the impact of emerging technologies on investments and wealth management. Okay. So we are going to cover, so this is what we said, application of emerging technologies to the investment and wealth management domain. Okay. So Let me. So we're going to cover algo trading, which stands for algorithmic trading. Instead of using human traders, use software programs to trade. So I'll cover that in brief detail for in the following slide. Okay. And second thing I'm going to talk about is data science in investments, meaning machine learning and AI applications in investments for large corporates. For example, if you are a treasury department and if you want to invest in cryptocurrencies and other investments or even regular stock market investment. How do you do that using machine learning and AI? Okay. Then third thing I'm going to talk about is robo advisory services. Robo stands for robot. And instead of human beings, advising you on how to manage your portfolio, there are robo advisory programs, basically software that will help you invest better. Right? That's called robo advisory services. Then we'll talk about blockchain settlements. I don't spend too much time on that because we need to introduce blockchain and things like that. But then you probably already know about blockchain. So we'll talk about how back-end stock markets are actually using blockchain to reduce the time frame from T+3, T+2, 2 days after the trade, 3 days after the trade, etc., to instantaneous settlement, which will happen on the blockchain itself. Right? Then we'll talk about crowdfunding. Okay, so crowdfunding, what is the crowdfunding platform? What is the concept of crowdfunding? How this is actually disrupting the venture capital, industry as a whole, and IPOs, etc. Then cryptocurrency, right? So everybody's interested in cryptocurrencies. I'm sure there'll be questions on, crypto, and actually that requires a separate, session on its own. I'm sure somebody else is probably doing that. So I just introduced, what are cryptocurrencies and then answer questions there. And then we'll also briefly touch upon decentralized finance. So decentralized finance refers to the application of blockchain technologies to the banking and financial services. For example, you can take a loan, you can lend money, you can trade without any intermediary. It's like buying from a vending machine, right? So, the last point, the decentralized finance is going to revolutionize the entire banking system. And if you're working in a bank, then you need to be worried about this because you're looking at a future where large number of banks will probably go away, right? So that's what decentralized finance actually means. So let's look at each of them now. Okay, so algo trading now. Algorithm refers to algorithmic trading, as you probably know, right? Okay, so how does algo trading work actually? So we are using a computer program with a defined set of rules to place a trade. For example, it can look at the market, analyze, and then identify opportunities. For example, there is an arbitrage opportunity. You can buy a particular stock from one stock exchange where the price is lower, and then sell it to another stock exchange where the price is higher. Okay, so this kind of it uses machine learning and AI to identify these opportunities, and then you can use the software to buy and sell without the involvement of any emotions. Right? So human beings, the biggest problem is when the market falls, then immediately people panic and then sell whatever they have, etc. Okay. So what algo trading does is actually, removes this emotional involvement of people, and it's like a machine-like precision. It can operate with unaffected by sentiments, etc. Right? So, and also, it can very quickly, when you're sleeping, in the night, it can actually generate profits for you. And see, many times what happens when human traders trade, before you're ready to place a trade, price changes, right? Because every second the price keeps changing, right? So, but a machine, a software program can actually do this, at the split second, and then generate profit at the speed and frequency it is impossible for human traders to. So these are the advantages of doing algorithmic trading. And you might ask this question, for example, is anybody doing algorithmic trading? Yes. If you look at the New York Stock Exchange, for example, 60 to 70% of the trades are actually machines trading with machines, right? It's not human beings, So if you look at old pictures of stock market, you'll find that there's a lot of traders in the trading floor, shouting with, two phones in their hands, etc. Now, you will never see that kind of a scene right now. Everything is done using software programs. It's like your software program against my software program, That's how it actually happens, okay? So, what about India? About 30 to 40% of NSE trading is actually using algo trading. So very soon it will be 90% of all the trades. Okay. So what are the advantages of algo trading? Trading at the best price. You can place orders instantly. There are no human errors. For example, when you get nervous and then instead of selling 500, you sell 5,000 shares, right? So those kind of things cannot happen. Right? And no emotional and super diversification is possible. For example, across exchanges, you can have a portfolio, and then you can trade across multiple exchanges and multiple time zones, and you can buy something and then sell it in Singapore, market in the evening and so on across accounts. So all that is actually possible with algo trading. Okay. So now, what are the disadvantages of algo trading? Right. So only about high frequency trading. It can trade at a very high speed. So if every computer is doing this, it can cause flash crashes. For example, suddenly it all adds up, and it has happened actually, several times in the market in the US. Suddenly the market, goes down because, somebody is selling, and then because the price is falling and somebody else also sells because the price is falling and so on. It's sort of, negative feedback cycle, it can, happen. So at those points, regulators come in and then, put a circuit breaker and then stop trading, and, those kind of things is what they do so that, it doesn't hit. Now, sometimes bad code can wipe out your account. Okay? So this is always a problem in, say, when you talk about digital transformation. Okay, every industry is going to be transformed. Okay, now when this happens, what is the biggest problem? Bad code. Sometimes there's a bug that you're not able to see initially, right? But under conditions of stress, when the software gets tested, bad code can actually wipe out your account. For example, in the blockchain, when you write a smart contract and put it on a blockchain, it is visible to everybody because it's a public blockchain, right? So I can even see the code. For example, using a blockchain explorer, you can actually see the code. And if there is a bug in the code, smart hackers can actually take advantage of that. Okay, so those are the disadvantages of not just algo trading. Any digitally intermediated process has this risk of software code not working sometimes. Okay? And it requires sophisticated hardware, software, and constant maintenance. It's not like you fill and forget it. That is not going to happen. You need to constantly maintain the software and keep updating it, new patches and things like that. Okay. So these are some of the algorithmic software programs available. Zerada, Omni says these are all Indian companies actually, Odin and Algonomics. You can probably look at them. So I'm not going to go in detail because algorithmic trading has been there for for a long time. Okay, so can companies, if you're a treasury head, for a bank, or if you're a large company, okay, so you always hear Michael Saylor investing in Bitcoin, and Elon Musk investing in Bitcoin. For example, Tesla has about 1.5 billion worth of Bitcoins. Right? So, so the trend now is a lot of big companies are investing in cryptocurrencies, and Bitcoin price is about $50,000 today, right? Now, apart from cryptocurrencies, even regular portfolio management by large portfolio managers can use machine learning and artificial intelligence to make these investments. This is called systematic investments as against discretionary investment. Now, when we say discretionary investment, we are talking about doing fundamental analysis, technical analysis. That's what we teach students, right? So, using all those processes, right? So you're a smart portfolio manager, very highly paid usually, and then you have millions of dollars to, or crores of rupees to invest, and you use a discretionary process. But then this systematic investment strategy is completely different. Okay, so so we need to understand this discretionary versus systematic investment strategies. Okay, now what is systematic investment? Okay, so now let me So what are systematic investment strategies? High frequencies, trading. Okay, so the same disadvantages that we always, had for, having this thing called mixed up a bit. Okay, let me explain what systematic investment actually. This is an example of a company called Systematica. They manage assets for a diverse investor base across the globe. Okay, now what they use. Okay, let me explain that. One, machine learning and artificial intelligence. Okay. Now, how do you use machine learning and artificial intelligence in this? Now, apart from the market indices, for example, you're looking at the stock, you're looking at the stock movements, etc. There are a lot of tweets in Twitter, and then we have a lot of social media posts about a particular company, and then a lot of blog posts, and a lot of chatter on the internet about a particular stock. Okay. Traditionally, if you are doing a discretionary investment, you normally don't really look at these factors. Okay. Now, using natural language processing or NLP, okay, we can actually, so what systematic investment managers do is they collect all this textual information, videos, and conversations that are happening across the web, etc., and analyze all that, and then find out using sentiment analysis, is the talk about a particular stock is favorable or not favorable. Okay. Now, so this information has so far been neglected. People never use this information, because if you look at the fundamental analysis and technical analysis, which we are familiar with, we always say, okay, particular stock has hit a particular number, and then after that it's going to go up. Or the fundamentals are actually very good because the company got a contract from the government for $100 million and things like that. So based on people used to use their discretionary investment stocks. Okay. Now, systematic investments are completely different, right? So we are not bothered about take that numbers into account anyway, but we also pay a lot of attention to the non-financial stuff. For example, people track things like. Hear me? There's some connection problem.
No, sir. No, sir. Hear you. It's
You are audible, sir.
Okay, cool. Okay. So, so what's happening? Instead of just depending on these numbers, regular company, financials, etc., you also track things like, what is the population growth, what is the container traffic numbers, okay, how is the weather pattern changing, all these, things into account, data put through a machine learning model, and then find out, for example, you might realize after doing this analysis that a vague thing like, some flood is going to affect, the prices of the products of the company you're actually, analyzing, right? So there are a lot of these, so using deep learning, I don't know if you have done this before. In normal machine learning, we need to actually find out, okay, these are the dependent variables, this is the independent variable, and there is a relationship between these two variables. And then you can actually build a model, machine learning model. So this is all very clear. But when there are so many factors that don't seemingly affect the price of a stock, for example, okay, it could be a container traffic or some tweet by Elon Musk. They're saying that Dogecoin is going to go up or whatever, right? So all these things actually affect the market prices, okay, in different ways. Okay, so if you're using deep learning and AI, you'll be able to make sense out of not just the fundamentals of the company, technical analysis of the company, a lot of other factors which are very difficult to actually, analyze in the traditional sense. So you take all this data and use a deep learning model. to predict the prices better and then hence buy. Okay, so this method of using machine learning and AI models to analyze not just the fundamentals and technical analysis, also use tweets and social media posts and blog posts and news and all that on a real-time basis, as and when it happens, right? When for example, some political leader makes a statement, or somebody gets killed, or there is a flood somewhere, etc. Instantaneously, this data is processed into the model, and then you can actually come up with investment decision. So this is called systematic investments, where we use machine learning and AI, including natural language processing, to decide where to invest, etc. Right? So one of these companies is actually Systematica. I suggest that you go and look at the company. Also, for example, there's another company called SRMIST. So this is again, it's called crafted quantitative strategies, which means machine learning and AI actually. And there are other companies like Fiera Capital. I'm just giving you 2 or 3 examples of companies. How much, for example, look at this company, US dollar 141.4 billion in assets under management. So this is the kind of methods used by companies. Okay, any questions on this? On systematic investments?
No, it's fine. You can go ahead.
Okay.
No, sir. No, sir.
Okay. Is there a question, comment, whatever, right? Yeah. Okay. So we'll come back to it if there's any questions and comments, etc. So the next thing I want to talk about is actually crowdfunding. Okay. How is what is crowdfunding, and then how crowdfunding is actually changing the venture capital industry, etc. So typically, if I'm an entrepreneur and I want to raise money, where do I go, right? If I go to a bank, then the bank is going to ask me, my entire Janam Patri, and then collateral, and take a long time to give me a loan. So if you know any businessman, you're dealing with a bank, you know this already, right? So increasingly, startups are not going to the banks; they're going to venture capital companies. Okay, but the problem with even venture capital companies is that one, you get money only if you're a high-tech product. For example, if you're an internet-based company, blockchain-based company, today money is available in plenty. What if if you're creating some other product, right? So, or it can be a socially conscious project, or it could be something that restores art and heritage buildings, those kind of things. So there's so many different ways of coming up with entrepreneurial ideas, right? So what crowdfunding does is that it does away with any intermediary like bank or venture capital companies or other investments, and then takes you directly to the people. So which essentially means that crowdfunding actually involves people across the globe who can actually look at your project specs and then understand what product you're going to create, and then if they're interested, they can actually put money in, right? So there are already thousands of entrepreneurs raising money using crowdfunding platforms. Money is getting raised not just for businesses, even for social projects, and even things like, for example, higher education. So you have a student who wants to do an MBA in the US, and he doesn't have money. Instead of going to the bank, he can actually go to a crowdfunding and then raise money. Or India, for example, you've seen people forwarding you WhatsApp messages that this particular person is sick, or a child is suffering from cancer, and then they have to raise money and so on, right? So you don't really know whether it's true, not true, and it's a scam or it's actually, a genuine case, etc. Now, crowdfunding platforms, perform a lot of these. They verify whether the claim is true, etc. So you have, somebody scrutinizing the project very well, and then, through an official verified platform, you can actually raise money, right? So there are a lot of crowdfunding platforms have come up, India and abroad, and let's look at some of them. So this is the concept actually, right? So what is crowdfunding? This is a type of crowdsourcing. Okay, small amounts of money from very large numbers. Okay, so you instead of taking, for example, the advantage of going to the crowd sourcing model as opposed to a venture cap. For example, if I go to an angel investor or a venture capital fund, they might give me $1 million and then take about 20%, 30% of the equity, right? So what really happens is you need to offer them a board seat. Yeah. You need to offer them a board seat, etc. And then they may sometimes start dictating terms of how the business should be done. So this is something entrepreneurs actually hate, right? So when I raised $1 million from ICICI Ventures, I gave 20% equity to ICICI Ventures for my first startup, and I had to offer a board seat to ICICI, one of the directors, and then so every 2 weeks, there'll be a meeting, and then he'll ask questions, and we need to answer, and then prepare reports, and just to keep them satisfied, because sometimes they have an opinion, right? So which you cannot really go against, and it puts. Suppose you have 2-3 big investors, and they have invested several $1 million, for example. Then as a CEO or as a promoter, your decisions have to be approved by the board, right? So this can be a big pain sometimes. So especially if you're a smaller organization, right? So what really happens is instead of giving a chunk of your equity to a big venture capital company, you're actually giving your equity to a large number of people. So which means that your equity is actually distributed across so many people. So they don't really have too much say. They just invest. Actually, they don't want to run your company. They just want to invest and take some return out of that. There are different models. For example, in crowdfunding, you can actually instead of giving shares, you can even give your products. You can actually pre-sell products. Sometimes if you are a musician or an artist, and if you're raising money from crowdfunding, you can just give some merchandise, t-shirts and mugs, and initial records, previews of the upcoming album, things like that. Okay, so instead of just giving away control, so entrepreneurs actually now increasingly prefer raising money from a large crowdfunding platform instead of going to single investors, right? Now, another important thing you need to consider in a crowdfunding platform is that they have what is known as an all or nothing rule. Most crowdfunding platforms have this model. So you say that you want to raise, say, $10 million or whatever is the amount, not 25 crores. Okay. Now it will be open for a certain number of period. Days, and then within that you need to raise that money. If you don't, then if you say, for example, if your issue is only 50% subscribed, then you need to return half the money to the people, and then you can always start with another campaign. So this ensures that this ensures that actually projects are, they're not slowly raising money for a very long period of time. So most platforms have this all or nothing rule. Then there are different platforms for different types of projects. For example, I mentioned entrepreneurial projects. For example, if I'm coming up with a new online education platform, or I'm coming up with a new fashion technology product or whatever, right? So I can raise money for that. Or it could be for some social enterprises. For example, I want to educate people So I want to build a library in the name of my grandfather in, say, Chennai, right? If I want to do things like that, or you want to make a movie, that will increase the social awareness against smoking or whatever, right? So if you do things like that, then there are a lot of people who are interested in investing in. So which means that, there's no one crowdfunding platform. There are different types of crowdfunding platforms for different, different projects and, market. Okay. Then there are, of course, non-monetary funding we talked about. So there are types of crowdfunding. One is just donation, not even equity. You go and say, especially for a social, project, for example, I'm building a hospital for the poor or whatever, right? So people can just come and donate, very small amount, like 100 rupees, $10, whatever, that kind of amount, and then you can collect it from, thousands of people, sometimes even millions, and then that will fund your, So it could be donation based, or it could be pre-order based. For example, I'm creating a new, very, very innovative, mobile phone, for example. Okay, so instead of investors can put money on a pre-order basis, so they get the first batch of the product for themselves, right? So they're early adopters, and then it could be not equity, but it could be pre-selling your product itself, actually. And the third type of crowdfunding is rewards based. Okay, so rewards meaning, I mentioned about musicians and artists and movie stars or NBA basketball players. So those kind of people can actually raise money from the crowd based on rewards, actually. Okay, reward meaning it could be tickets for the first show, or it could be rights to the movie or song, or things like that. Okay, so it could be there are several platforms which actually cater to this kind of model as well. Okay. And there are also debt-based. It's called peer-to-peer lending, which is actually a sub portion of a crowdfunding or crowdsourcing model. Okay, so you already probably heard about peer-to-peer lending, right? So in a peer-to-peer lending platform, for example, if I'm an MBA student and I want to do a PhD, I want to go to the US and do it, I need maybe 50 lakhs. So I can raise that kind of money from the crowd on a debt basis, like loans. Like once I get a job, I'll repay this thing, right? The platform will make sure that my request is reached out to a lot of people who can examine the course and whether I get a job after that or not, and everything, and then do it. So peer-to-peer lending is controlled by RBI in India, for example. There's a whole new topic which we won't have time to go into, but you need to understand that this is actually a variant of the regular crowdfunding model. There are a lot of companies which fund businesses. There are SME peer-to-peer lending. There are retail peer-to-peer lending companies in India. About 30-40 companies are already there operating. They are all controlled by the Reserve Bank of India. They have to be an NBFC. It registers an NBFC P2P. There's a special category of NBFC called NBFC P2P, and RBI rules are there for minimum equity, net worth of the below promoter. That is equity-based, which is the common one, which I talked about, right? But unfortunately, in India, equity-based crowdfunding is not allowed because, you need to go through the SEBI, and then, you file a prospectus, and if you want to raise money from the public, there are a lot of, scams that happen in this space. So India, we still don't allow crowdfunding for equity-based. So that's really the, so this sort of covers the different types of crowdfunding. Okay. So what are the advantages of crowdfunding? You can, as I told you earlier, you can operate independently. You don't have to offer board seats to anyone. And the equity gets distributed so that no one particular shareholder has a very large chunk of equity. So, he cannot ask you so many questions, right? And then social validation. For example, when you go and, present your project to a large number of people, there are so many experts and who are investors, right? So if they like the project, it also means that, so many people are actually evaluating your product and giving you validation, right? So this itself is actually, whether you get money or not, getting feedback from so many people, right? So who are probably, your customers anyway, right? So if they give you okay, and then if they invest money, they're voting with that money, then that itself will spell success for your company, because your model is validated, and then people can give you feedback, and then you can go back and then so for example, if you don't raise the required amount of money at all, okay, so you wanted 50 lakhs and you got only 25 lakhs, okay, so you can ask people, why did they not invest? They will tell you your business model is wrong, or product is not good enough, there is too much competition area, whatever. So that feedback will actually help you. So you can go back to the drawing room, modify, your project, and then again go back to the crowdfunding platform. And also, there is no limit. There are so many platforms, with different communities of people, right? So if you don't raise money in the Indian market, you may be able to, raise money, in the international market, for example. Maybe your customers could be, abroad. Maybe the market is not ready, and so on. So this removes all this, nation divisions and market divisions, etc., and give you access to the global market directly. Because the global market is so large, so even if a very small, what we call as long tail project, I'm making, pants for people only. Okay. Now, how many 1 lakh people will actually buy this pant, right? So, but then if you look at the global market, 10 people in Brazil and 25 in China and 45 in, Russia and 200 in US, whatever, right? So this number will sort of add up, and then, you get access to the international market. And then even a project which is seen as not viable, in India, maybe viable actually, if you look at the international market, right? Another important feature is that, that you can actually find your dealers, distributors, consultants, even employees, okay, from this crowd actually, because somebody is very interested. They look at the product, they're not going to invest, but then they say, okay, I'm a consultant, I can actually, give you ideas about how to make this. Or it could be employees, who are looking at it and say, I like this idea, I want to work for you, right? So, so it's not just the money, okay? So you get a lot of other inputs as well. You can get a distribution, arrangement in Brazil, for example, okay? Or you can get a dealership in China, whatever, right? So which you will otherwise not be able to reach out, okay? Because the platform is working for you, because they have evaluated you. So there is a trust, so you'll be, and then you're going to honor your commitments, etc. So, so that is again, another important advantage of crowdfunding, as opposed to going to a bank or a venture capital company and then getting one guy on the board and give away equity, etc. This model, is much better. So a lot of entrepreneurs are now looking at crowdfunding as a major way of raising money. Okay. Now there are some disadvantages, right? So obviously, so not all projects, for this. For example, I'm working on a highly secretive model which can easily be copied by other people. Now I cannot put my presentation on the platform, right? So anybody can copy that idea. So that's again, so it is not suitable for all projects. Say I'm a defense contractor, I want to make a product, for the defense industry, and it's a reason I can't really put in the technical details of the product, because that's not a a good idea, right? So not all projects can be put up, right? So then the second thing is the all or none rule I told you, right? You have to say this is the money I want to raise, and this is the time frame, and within that, if you don't raise, the platform will say, okay, return all the money to. So this is a safety measure for the investors, because if there is not enough number of investors who are invested in a project, the platform feels that this project is not good enough to be funded. So they want a minimum number of people to invest. So that is why they have this rule. But then it's not very friendly to right? So, but not all platforms have this all-around approach. There are some platforms where you don't have, suppose I want to raise 50 lakhs. Okay, we got only 25 lakhs. Okay, so some platforms allow you to take that money and then give respective, equity to people, right? So, this is not for all platforms, but most platforms have this. Okay. And again, as I told you earlier, in India you can't raise equity, through. Now, I want to give you examples of crowdfunded. Okay, which are the famous companies that got crowdfunded? They didn't go to the regular venture capital. So, for example, Oculus. Oculus is actually a virtual reality. You can see this classes. That you can put. So it started with gaming, but it's got a lot of other applications as well in marketing and things like that. So Oculus got bought by Facebook later. So this is one of the biggest examples, of how creative idea got funded by a crowdfunding platform. Then later, they sold it to Facebook for $7 billion. So, there are several examples. I'm just giving you, one or two. And then, there is another company called Glowforge, which is a 3D laser printer. Okay, so you can actually, print using 3D printing. I'm sure you have heard about 3D printing because the 3D printers work for creating prototypes. And suppose I want to create, let's say, a disaster zone. There's an earthquake somewhere, and then you need to build quickly, shelters for people. And there are companies who can actually build a shelter, a small house within 24 hours, actually using 3D printing. So you can just move the, a 3D printer to the place, and then you can actually do that, right? So, or if I am a company, I'm a textile machine manufacturer, and I'm not able to find a small part. Okay? So how do I, so I can actually make it using. So for small batches of products, okay, especially in the airline industry, for example, GE, General Electric, GE, airline, they make engines, aircraft. Okay. So there are engine parts that can be actually made using 3D printing. Okay. So there are a lot of industries which are actually using this now. So this is an example of particular type of 3D printer which raised money from crowdfunding. Okay. Another iconic example is actually Apple watches. Okay, so this is like the Apple watch kind of thing. So it was one of the pioneers. Created. So these are actually very. Of course, now they come up with headphones and wireless speakers and wearables and all these things. They started with Apple Watch. Then this is an example of a game. Actually, somebody came up with the exploding kittens. This is actually a game. They could raise money for a game and sell it to people, because see, the gaming market, I don't know if you know this, gaming market worldwide is bigger than music and Hollywood put together. Okay, so about 50% of the population worldwide actually play games. Okay, so it's not just the Generation Z or younger millennials who are doing this. Actually, if you look at the whole population, a lot of people actually play video games, etc. Now, so this game is a very popular game that raises money through crowdfunding. Okay. Okay. So, which are the top crowdfunding sites? One is Kickstarter. Okay. So Kickstarter is actually an amazing site where you can actually go and raise money for various projects. Let me just show you this. Okay, can you see this? Yeah. You look at the you have projects in arts, comics, illustration, design and technology, film, food, craft, games, music, publishing. There are so many, projects here, for example, so see, somebody is, the last and inverse graphic novel, so you can actually raise money for even, crazy ideas like this, actually, So for example, so if you're an investor, you can actually go and look at, say, for example, composer Christopher Tin wants to create an album to commemorate extinct birds. Okay. So, there are even projects like this that can get, funded. For example, let's say, design and tech, for example, right? So I just want to give you a couple of examples, right? See, this is a Mojo 68, a see-through, customizable and programmable mechanical keyboard. So this is an invention. Just imagine if you go to a bank to raise money for this, right? You'll not get. So, so any of these, say, look at these products, for example. Okay, F100, the versatile everyday flashlight and power. The total amount so far pledged, they wanted to raise $98,000, and $10,000 they already got. They got 984 backers, and they still have 30 days to go. Okay, so you can actually look at, for example, how it works. Okay. So this is an example of an innovative product, you can actually create, and then you can get it, funded. Okay. So there are so many projects like this, and then, you can look at the details, you can ask questions about the products, everything is available actually, right? So, and if you want to back this product, you can click on this thing and then, commit how much money you, okay. So it is all or nothing here. This project will only be funded if it reaches its goal by Friday, September 24 at 5:46 p.m. Okay. Before that, you need to raise this money. Otherwise, so this is an example of how Kickstarter does. So I suggest you go to this platform and look at various projects, etc. So this is Indigo, very similar platform. Inside out hydroponic planter, just add water inside and the plant grows outside. So this is actually a product. So this is again, Indigo is a very similar model. They are actually competing platforms. So Indiegogo says Indiegogo is where early adopters and innovation seekers find lively, imaginative tech before it hits the mainstream. So these people claim that they are the ones to find and fund innovative projects before that it's the market. Okay. And there are other, for example, look at this, right? GoFundMe. This is another platform where fundraising for the people and causes you care about. Okay. So you can actually look at fundraise for example, you can raise funds for. I'll just show you, how this works. So these are all, you can fundraise for example, medical, memorial, emergency, non-profit, education, any of these causes actually. So it could be, for example, emergency in Afghanistan. So if you want to, give money for this kind of thing, we are raising more money, for. Or it could be individual corona relief, for example. A lot of money has been collected on the platform for corona relief. Things like that. So, and social action, right? Okay, so this is just to give you a flavor of how many different platforms are there available, right? So this is another platform called Crowdfunder. Again, community project, business, sports, campaign, charity, personal cause. Anything, right? And this is, another fund like this. Okay, Crowdcube. I'll also show you some Indian examples how. See, this is what Crowdcube. At Crowdcube, our purpose is to democratize investment. So, in most places, what really happens is, only the biggest investors get the opportunity to invest in, the next Facebook, and if other investors are not. For example, the US, they have what is known as accredited investors. Okay, only if you register with them, and then if they have you are allowed to invest in certain companies, startups. Okay, so what these platforms are doing is that they're democratizing this process. Okay, so you can actually get an equity stake. So these are other platforms. Okay. Now let's look at some Indian crowdfunding platforms. For example, ATAL. This is for a social cause. Actually, you can fundraise for. See, look at how much they 1,100 crores they've raised already. Right, there are 55 lakh donors, and so many people have raised money. Okay. So this is a very famous platform. Crowdera. Crowdera is a similar for girls' education, and then this is for the causes actually. So India, country like India, it's very important. Right? And see, this Wishberry is very different. India's most successful crowdfunding platform for creative artists. If you want to make a movie, or if you have a innovative art project, you can actually use. So as I told you, depending on the project, you can actually choose the platform. And Impact Guru is again, a very similar, platform where if you want to create social impact, so instead of giving money to unknown people and then, wondering whether it actually reach them or not, you get this amazing, platforms where you get feedback and you put money and then they tell you where they spent it and things. Okay. So Milab is another platform. These are all different Fuel a Dream. This is for entrepreneurs. Okay. Okay. So these are all different crowdfunding options available. Okay. So any questions, comments?
No,
This
sir.
crowdfunding, who verifies the authenticity? Because you are telling something like people may be fraud or something like that. They would not have got any idea, but must be looking for a fund. How do they verify the authenticity?
Okay, so most platforms, what they do is, they have a team. Okay, so they actually go and verify the claims. And many platforms also have experts in multiple areas empaneled. And again, there are a lot of consultants who might work for free or things like that. So there are a lot of people who can actually, they spread the word around and then verify. See, instead of a venture capital company or a bank, they have very limited resources to verify. Okay, and there are corruption, fraud, and things like that also happen sometimes, right? So instead, these platforms have a global reach. So they can ask, for example, a US-based consultant that, hey, will this project actually work? Okay, or you can verify the authenticity of, somebody will check your Facebook account, somebody will check your, antecedents, somebody will know your classmate in school or college, which batch of IIM you passed or whatever, right? They know. So they, it's a lot easier for a crowdfunding platform to do this verification process than individual banks, because banks do a very poor job. Already know that. There's so many frauds that come to light, and people don't pay back the money, etc. Right? So it's difficult for example, if you go to SEBI and file, there is actually no major verification, process. They ask you questions, that's it, and then public. They always say this is the risk you are supposed to verify yourself and then take the risk, right? So compared to that kind of platform, these platforms are pretty good. They're better equipped than conventional banks and institutions.
I have one more question. Sorry.
Sure.
See, this,
Yeah.
I think probably you explained this answer, but still the doubt is not clear.
Yeah,
See,
sure,
you
sure,
said
yeah.
joint venture, they become a board member, so a lot of obligations is there. In the crowdfunding, what is the advantage for the funder? Because the beneficiary will get, he will do whatever is required. But what is the advantage for the funder who gives the money?
Okay, so see, who's the funder here? That's a question you'd ask. Say the institutions are not going to come to a crowdfunding platform and put money because they want control over the investment. Okay. So who is the investor here? These are retail investors actually, right? They are spread over geographically across. So what they do is, suppose I am an entrepreneur and I'm raising, for example, I'm running an online education company and then I want to raise, say, 10 crores, So I'm taking small amounts of money from a very large number of people. So the investor gets, one social validation. For example, thousands of other investors are also investing and they've done the due diligence, etc. I can talk to other people, I can ask questions directly, I can do verification, myself, etc. Before putting up a very small amount, actually, right? So even if I lose that money, for example, see, there is no guarantee that all these projects will succeed, right? Obviously. So, but then I'm taking a very small risk, and I'll put maybe 1,000 rupees, not more than that, right? So, there is risk mitigation happens across the board, actually. First, it's all very small amounts. Second, a lot of people are validating this. See, instead of raising, for example, if I'm an angel investor, instead of, putting 1 crore in the project and getting 20% equity, if the same 1 crore comes from, 50,000 people, right? So, that way it benefits both the parties, right? So see, this is why investors like venture capital companies, etc. They don't like this idea of crowdfunding platforms because it is eating into their business. Because,
okay, fine. Yeah, I got
yeah. So they won't invest. See, for example, I gave you my example, right? I say, because every time, sometimes, they make stupid demands. Actually, you should start an office in Delhi, within next month. I had to do it because I didn't have too much of a say in the whole process. Actually, yeah. Okay. Any other comments?
Yeah, got it.
Any other questions, comments?
Good
Yes,
afternoon, Austin sir. This
Good
is
afternoon.
Dr. Ritu. This is the second time we are meeting.
Oh,
Yes,
yeah, sure.
we have already met in IPS.
I know. Yeah. We did this program on FDP.
Yes.
Yeah. True.
My one question is that what legal complication or obligations we have in crowdfunding in the view of RBI, because it is a foreign currency, right? So
Okay.
it has
there
a
are
law
both
FEMA.
Indian. Okay, you finish the question. So what is the legal liability for whom? For the investor or for the people who raise money?
So the person who raised funds. Because if, example, I'm taking a fund from some NRI or some outsiders, so they are going to transfer into their own currency. Then I have to get a conversion of my currency. So it comes into a FEMA, right? So what are the legal complications or obligations we have?
There are no complications. See, there are rules which the Indian government says you should follow if you raise money from abroad. Okay? So there is a foreign direct investment. It cannot exceed a certain limit. In certain sectors, it is prohibited. Certain sectors, it is allowed. In certain sectors, it's only 60%, 30%, and all that. Okay. So, but then here we are talking about a very small, so I'm an entrepreneur, I'm raising, say, 10 crores, for example. So, you just need to follow the normal RBI rules and then, file returns and things like that. Follow FEMA, truthfully. So that is actually allowed. See, today you can invest in US stocks, for example. It's allowed, right? So you just need to get, the right permissions and things like that for the fundraising. Okay? And for the people who are investing, for example. See, we're talking about Indian platforms and we're talking about global platforms. Okay. So, if you don't want these, regulatory complications, you can raise money from the Indian platforms, right? Because, but if your product is a global product, for example, right? So you can actually raise, say, for example, don't even raise it. I come up with an innovative product. Suppose I have a, very innovative instructional design. I'm teaching machine learning, using games, So I want to actually learn, right? So what I do is I don't even raise money. I just pre-sell my, product subscription. Okay. In that case, what happens? It just becomes a sale, actually. So I just need to follow, that regulation. So the options today, you have, if you don't want to give equity away, because as an entrepreneur, I don't want to give a lot of equity to people, right? So, I can pre-sell, I can get, consultants, I can do all those other things, instead of just raising money. So in one, and I can go to multiple platforms to do multiple things. For example, same project. Okay, I can pre-sell in one platform, and then using an Indian platform raise equity. So equity can't do. I can get a debt funding from Indian platform. Right. I might have a social for example, corporate governance project along with that. Okay, so that I can go to Impact Guru and then do this, right? So you have so much of flexibility available, which is not available when I go to a bank or a venture capital companies. There is no reason why people call venture capitalists as the vulture capital, because they always want to. I had a pretty interesting experience with venture capital companies, because they are so greedy now because they want 40% upward IRR, and then they want to grow very fast, and then they want to always sell you. So that is really the problem. If you want to run your own company, etc., you should always limit your. Don't give away equity. Initially, sell the product. Because the pre-selling idea I like very much, because it gives you validation, right? And you get the money and then you start the production, right? Instead of, so your working capital is taken care of, assured sale is there, feedback which you can improve the product and so on. So those are the advantages, and also for venture capital is not now available for normal projects actually. Unless you're a high tech, because venture capital is like they invest, everybody invests in AI. Everybody say I'm an AI company, then I get $10 million. In Bangalore, there's a company which is doing flying taxis. Okay, vertical takeoff $1 million. Okay, so that is all so if you are a social project, if you want to do something, you want to build a library, who is interested in funding it, right? How much money will they get? So for these projects, so any other comments, questions? Okay, so the next topic I want to address is actually robot advisory services. So now this prelude to this is this. Okay, how machine learning and AI is actually changing every part of the industry. Okay. Now, can somebody tell me why is AI so hot today? Why everybody AI?
Because of the prediction feature and gives a predictive analysis.
Absolutely, yeah. So see, we start something. You want to get married. You want to compare your this thing. So you go to astrologer and then ask before doing a project. People want to know in advance, right? So this was not possible earlier. Actually, so because of this big data, so you have data coming from various. The ability to process this data, for example, a normal SQL database cannot process this big data because it can't it can't be put in a tabular form. Tweets, you have Facebook posts, you have a lot of these and from cameras and from data from all these IoT devices that keep coming. So you have so much of data available, and then we also now fortunately have the way to process this data to various data warehouses and things like that. So we are able to do. So this is actually a perfect storm. You have big data, cloud computing. We have a place to store all this, and then we have huge capacity. There are multiple players offering this, and algorithms to make sense of the current data, and like you said, predict what are the possibilities. So suddenly, every business, it's like the invention of the electricity, actually, right? When steam engine, when electricity invented, and everything became run by. So that is exactly what, for example, Microsoft calls itself. Satya Nadella says Microsoft is an AI company. Okay, Sundar Pichai says Google is an AI company. Mark Zuckerberg says Facebook is an AI company, right? So every company, will become an AI company actually. For example, if you're not using machine learning and AI, you're going to be left out actually, right? So this is so that is why business analytics and Harvard Business Review said data scientist designation is the sexiest designation in the business world. It's actually true because there is a need for so many data scientists, and can ask the so somebody compared AI to the invention or Sundar Pichai. So he said it's like the invention of fire. Okay, so in the early history of mankind, AI is something as important as the discovery of fire and the invention of a wheel. So it's that's significant actually. It's going to transform practically every industry. Okay, so robot advisory services is actually see, for example, if I have say 1 crore to invest, okay. And then, in India, and I go to Bombay and then say, okay, hire the best portfolio managers. Nobody will actually touch me with a barge pole because this amount is so small for me. Because, you need to have corpus to invest if you want, any service from any portfolio, manager of sorts. So, this is the problem for example, you're a salaried person, and you just don't get good service from these people because you cannot afford these expensive portfolio, managers. So only for family officers and people with high net worth. There are a lot of people, who are called high net worth individuals. So those are the people who get, excellent service from the portfolio, right? So what robot advisory services is doing is actually it's democratizing the access wealth management to the masses. So suppose you're a salaried person, and if you want to invest, today you have only a mutual fund to invest, and that kind of investment, right? So you're subject to market, right? You don't get advanced portfolio management strategies available to common, even if you're an individual or even a small company, for example, you have a treasury management function, very difficult. So what is a robot, in this context actually, right? So what we do is you take kind of portfolio, a portfolio. Okay. So what is the kind of risk profile do you have? For example, how old are you? So suppose you are 30. Your 30s and your wife is in your 30s, and then you work for ICICI Bank, and then she works for a software company, and then you have 2 small kids who are just in primary school, and you live in a large city, things like that. So you have money to invest, take risks because you are young, and you can buy equity stocks, even buy currencies and things like that. So you're willing to take that level of risk. Okay, so so you need a particular portfolio which consists of, say, for example, maybe 40% equity and 30% debt, money market, and some cash, that kind of thing. Suppose you are about to retire. Okay, then you are working in Bombay, and your wife is a housewife, and then not working, and you have grown up children. And, one daughter is to be married off very, and then the son is just joining. That kind of situation, and you have a house that you would like to come back to, say, Chennai, and then settle down, etc. So then your situation is very different, right? So the kind of risk you can take, you cannot, for example, take entire cash and put it in short-term securities or crypto or stocks. So you need to actually plan. Yeah, come again. Hello. Someone said something. Okay. So what normal portfolio managers do is that they sit with you and understand your, depending on the age and the illnesses you have and the insurance, and then so all that, how much money you can actually spare every month, and when are you going to retire. So based on all this, they create this risk profile, and then create a portfolio, and then say they do a portfolio allocation, 10% in equity, 20% in, 30% in this particular, all that, shares, etc. Now, so this is what robo advisory services actually, so instead of a human being doing this, you go to the website, answer a set of questions. They ask you about your age and what are your other obligations and all that. Actually take all that into account, and they have pre-made portfolios depending on, this is actually called mass customization. It's not like it is going to determine a spec for you, but they actually put you in buckets of risk profile. And then for this particular risk profile, say risk index is like 1 to 3%, that kind of risk index, and then you will be given a set of portfolios. So a portfolio gets allocated to you. Okay, so that's what happens. Services. Now, what is robo in this advisory services? Okay, so what the way they pick stock is again using systematic investments, which I talked about earlier. For example, I told you that instead of just depending on discretionary portfolio managers who go through fundamental analysis, technical analysis, etc., they actually look at the market. They take into account all the inputs, even text, complex data, seemingly unrelated data. How does the African situation, this particular, so they take everything into account. And then they invest only in certain stocks. So they also take, ETF, for example, exchange traded funds, and so they don't want direct exposure to cryptocurrencies, for example. They might actually take. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, your question. Yeah.
Yeah, sir. I wanted to ask that machine learning and artificial intelligence or deep learning, they work on the data, so big data set which is available to us, and accordingly they are taking the decision, suggesting us just what to do and what not to do.
Okay.
And we are saying that it is good because we don't have any place of sentiment and etc. So obviously the data is there and they are working on that. So, but is there any instance when human mind has taken the better decision in comparison to this whatever I should say, this technology?
Okay. See, this has been, let me explain this question, because, so are human beings better, right?
Yeah.
Than, machines in taking these decisions. Okay. Now, see, if you look at how the brain works, see, all this deep learning methodology, for example, if you really look at a deep learning neural network, okay, what we are really doing is we are copying how the brain actually works. Okay, so the brain has 100 billion neurons, and so your brain is actually much more powerful than any supercomputer that we have, right? But the problem is we cannot handle so much of data at the same time, because your brains have evolved. See, for example, you have something known as amygdala. Let's begin here, right? Amygdala. Our entire brain has developed over the evolution to look for dangers outside, and then because survival is the most important objective of the brain. Okay, so that is why, for example, if you look at news today, you will find that everything is going bad, and then there is problem in Afghanistan, there is this child getting raped. So you have a lot of these news actually. If you objectively look at, for example, Ray Kurzweil, an expert on exponential technology. If you look at all the measures last 30-40 years, they have done well on education, poverty is down, disease is down. For example, COVID, it just happened 100 years ago, after the population would have got kicked out. So actually things are very good, but then news sensationalizes small negative events and make it very big, and your brain pays attention to this. Okay? So by nature, we are not very good at judging the reality. Okay, so because our brains always, when the stock, one particular stock falls down, or you hear a negative news, immediately you will sell actually. Okay? So that is why, in fact, in Japan, there are junior traders, and then there are senior traders who sit behind, people who have 30-40 years of experience. Whenever this guy is making a mistake, that guy will put a hand and then say, "Boss, relax and take a deep breath," and then do the next trade later. Right? So human beings are not though your brain is very good in terms of calculating better than any neural network that can have, but then you're also affected by emotions. So, that is why we make wrong decisions, when you get emotional. So you cannot take a very clinical, decision. That's impossible. One. Second thing is, for example, if you look at how AlphaGo defeated the international Go champion, okay, or Deep Blue, the computer that defeated, example, Gary Kasparov, world chess champion, IBM's Deep Blue computer. So in fact, the IBM Deep Blue computer did not know how to actually play chess. It learned only while playing with Kasparov. Okay. So we, the computers have this advantage of handling very large volume of data and calculating, doing number of calculations per second, much faster than, any human beings can do. Okay. In the terms of judgment, for example, should I marry this person or not? Should I trust this person, not trust this person? I think that kind of functions, the human brain is excellent. Okay. But machines are doing already extremely well in, like, for example, machine translation. A translator can, translate from German to English, and vice versa. A machine can actually do any language to any language in a matter of seconds. Because it's like brute force calculation. That human brain is not very good at it. The human brain is good at, but then having said that, in the next 15, 20 years, we will reach a point of singularity. What Ray Kurzweil, you've probably heard about singularity universities. Okay, what they're saying is, we have two types of artificial intelligence. One is the, one we are already, having, right? So, where machines can do much faster calculations and things. Then the second phase is where machine intelligence will equal human intelligence. Okay, that's called artificial general intelligence. Okay, so when that happens, this becomes the point of singularity. And then, according to Ray Kurzweil, we are only 12, 13 years away from singularity. Okay, so when this happens, even this judgment kind of things can be done by machines. Okay, so stock market portfolio management, etc., is based on calculations and things like that. See, what about human sentiments, you might ask, so what about people's feeling, etc.? All that is captured in tweets and, blog posts and text, etc., which is also analyzed by the machine. So we are already taking into account the sentiments of the market, things like that. So that is why, we're covering both, sides.
Thank you so much, sir.
Okay. Another question.
Extensive.
Yes,
it added in the knowledge, but I just wanted to know whether you have come across in any of the literature or anywhere where it is saying that, okay, at this point of time, human mind works in terms of the stock market investment, and so that human mind works better than the machine.
Human mind, is better in certain tasks. Yeah. As I told you about judgment and things like that, right? So, for example, facial recognitions. Just looking at a person, immediately your brain can make out. You have intuition, for example. You meet a person and something tells you that something is wrong with this person, etc. Right? Machines can't do that, right? But for regular operations like stock market investments, machines can do a much better job just because they can they take data, much larger amount of data than you can actually process, right? And without emotions. So that is the advantage machines have. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much, sir.
Another question. Somebody raised hand. Yeah. Somebody else raised a hand. So, the question. Is there a question? Because somebody raised to do this thing. Okay. So in robot-based services, actually, so what are the advantages? See, for example, if you go to a portfolio manager in Bombay, I have 10 crores to invest. So he looks at my profile, etc., and comes up with a thing. Then what he will do is, whenever he gets some positive news about a particular stock, he'll call me and say, "Boss, let's invest, in this particular company." And whenever there is a negative news, then say, "Okay, it's better to sell this particular stock." So this is called active portfolio management. So you're reacting to news and events, and sometimes your own intuition and things like that. Because you're a discretionary, a portfolio manager, so you have a lot of experience, and so that this is not going to work and things. So this is called active, portfolio management. So the problem with active portfolio management is that every time you buy and sell, you're going to incur transaction costs, which is okay if you have a very large, suppose I have $100 million to invest, then it's fine. Transaction cost is a very small portion of the total gain I'm going to get. So it works for very large, investors. But then, if you are a small investor, the transaction costs can kill you, because that might take away, whatever little benefit you are getting, you're paying through, and then the service charge payable to the portfolio manager is also pretty high. They charge 5%, 10%, and they may not even serve you if you don't have enough investments to make. So another big problem with the large portfolio managers is that they charge you for transaction costs, then they actively, but the robot-based services don't actively manage your portfolio. It's called passive portfolio management. So what is passive portfolio management? So you buy, allocate your money to various assets in that particular percentage order that you have decided based on, and forget about it. Okay, so at the end of the year, right, you take stock and then find out, see, because the prices would have changed for each of these securities, your allocation will not be the same. You wanted to invest 30% with equity. Now, if you look at the end of the year, it would have gone to 45% because the rupee value of this number of stocks you invested would have changed. So do what is known as rebalance. So what you do is you rebalance the portfolio by selling and buying stuff, and then make sure that the asset allocation is the same percentage that you originally intended. So this is called portfolio rebalance. So what characterizes robot-based services is that you have very clearly a risk profile, allocate the portfolio, and don't do active management, do passive management. At the end of the year, you rebalance. It's called automatic portfolio readjustment or rebalancing. So which the software will automatically, it will find out what is the deviation, and then sell or buy automatically, and then bring it back to. Of course, sometimes they do it every 6 months. Some funds do that. Some advisory services do it a year. But the annual is the normal thing. And second thing is, because they don't do active management, your transaction costs are very low, and they don't charge you for every time buying and selling. So they just have a fixed fee, the annual fee, for example, and it's very small. For sometimes it could be like 5,000 rupees per annum for the entire portfolio. So this is very advantageous for the masses. Actually, a lot of salaried people who want to invest. This is an amazing thing because you get the same level of service whether you're like you're a billionaire, whether you're a salaried employee, you get the same level because the machine doesn't really differentiate, right? So of course, having said this, we don't really have pure robot. It's not like some machine does everything. So sometimes you have different forms of human involvement. For example, in some funds, there is a human team which oversees this just to make sure that everything is all right. Or sometimes in the initial stages, the human portfolio managers get involved in allocating the this thing, right? Yeah, yes, Mr. Karthikeyan. Yeah, please go on, Mr. Karthikeyan. Yeah. Yeah, you have a question, Karthikeyan? Yeah. Okay, I can't hear. Hello. You raise your hand. So, okay, you can ask whenever you need to. Sometimes people accidentally, but okay. So, so I told you the various levels of human involvement. It is actually a hybrid model in many cases. So so this is what I actually mentioned also. Robot advisors provide so Karthikeyan, you have a question? Okay, so robo advisors provide digital advice based on algorithms. Okay, so moderate minimal human intervention. The software automatically allocates, manages, and when I say optimization, I'm talking about rebalancing portfolio. Okay, so what is the market for robot advisors? Okay, so this I already told you. What is the market for? So the market is actually huge, right? So all the salaried employees who don't have access to particular thing have no portfolio management advice whatsoever, right? So they get for a very small amount. For example, Aditya Birla Group has a wealth advisor plan which just charges 5,000 rupees. So that's amazing. So the customer. So this is what I told you. Customer answers questions, demographic, income, investment goals, etc. Company creates a risk profile and allocates a model portfolio based on the and buys the securities and automatically rebalances it over a period of time. Or, this. And a very minimum, fee, low transaction, automatic rebalancing. So what are the disadvantages? For investors, see, if you want to take advantage of a huge investment opportunity, you may not be able to, do that because, you get only standard portfolios. Okay. The second thing is, for people, older individuals with complex financial requirements. For example, you have insurance requirements, you have pretty complicated, you sold a house somewhere and, you have invested in some farm house and, that income has to be treated, merged. So if you have these complex, requirements, then the robot advisory services is still not, very sophisticated enough to take care of all these wrinkles actually. For a straight standard, salaried employee, small business, and this actually works very well. But for complex, business, you have investment abroad, and you're getting income from cryptocurrency. So if you have that kind of thing, it's a problem. So again, for younger tech-savvy customers, so the problem for robo advisory services is that a lot of youngsters who are very computer savvy, they won't invest, but unfortunately they don't have money. But if you look at older investors who have a lot of money to invest, but they're not very savvy, in terms of not big. Now, in fact, what happened to they were making a lot of losses, just like all the internet companies. And then, now they started looking at older customers who are also computer savvy. Now, people in their 40s, 50s, they're also quite savvy and they have invested. Track them back from the, traditional banks and so this is what is happening with, robot advisory service. And also, very large existing portfolio advisory companies are getting into robot advisory services so that they can offer this service to the older customers who have. So, so how are they really faring? I told you this already. Okay. So, which are the top robot advisory in the global, So you have Betterment, which is a pioneer in robot advisory service. So they help you. They're one of the first to start work. Then Wealthfront is again, another pioneer, next only to Betterment. So these are the top global players. Then the traditional, stockbrokers like Charles Schwab, they also started investing. In fact, they also have operations in it. So these are the example of the traditional player who's getting into. Then you have there are robot advisory services for specific needs for women, for example. So women are generally underrepresented in the portfolio management, industry because their needs are different, right? So they have breaks in careers and they make less amount of money for the same job they actually do in many industries, right? So, so the needs are different, and we need the health, needs are different. So there are specialist, robot advisory services focusing on, these kind of, market. So Elvest is one company like that. Ally is another, a big international. Then Ameritrade is actually a original, big stockbroker. Now, just like, TD Ameritrade, just like Charles Schwab, they also got into. Okay. So now Fidelity is again, they got so much. See, advantage of Fidelity is that thousands of mutual funds, their own mutual funds and exchange traded funds. So what they do is when they invest, they actually use their own funds to invest for your robot advisory service. So that way they are actually able to diversify risk even better. So you get a very solid, backing of experts who run these ETFs and mutual funds. So when your robot advisor puts money in these stocks or funds, you're doubly assured that your money is actually safe. So this is the best of both worlds. Only a robot, then you also have human intervention. So Wealthsimple is again another US-based robot advisor. Now, for the robot advisor services in India, okay, these are players in India, funds India. See, in fact, what happened in India is that mutual funds and then aggregator of mutual funds. These are the people who are actually offering portfolio services as well. So there are big stockbrokers who look at only high net worth individuals. They're not still into robot advisory services yet, but there are players like, for example, funds India invest in the best mutual funds. So as you can see, there are robot advisors specializing in certain areas. For example, there are robot advisors invest only in say mutual funds or exchange traded funds and so on. And then there are a lot of other people who look at exotic investments like cryptocurrency and blockchain products and things. Then you have Scriptbox, which again, algorithmically selected mutual funds. So, there are hundreds of mutual funds now. So you need, machine learning AI to select the right funds based on your, risk profiles. So Scriptbox. Then there's something called Goalwise. So now, this is called goal-based investment. Okay. So they ask questions like, what are your financial goals? You want to build a house, you want to get your educated, higher education, right? You want to provide for your health benefits, and so you need to basically specify what are your financial goals. This is called goal-based investment actually. So many portfolio managers start with that kind of thing and then work backwards and then say what kind of portfolio you should really have. Okay, there's something called issue. It's called advisor, independent financial advice, planning, mutual fund markets. They have a wide variety. So this is another example of a portfolio advice in India. And then Artha Yantra is again another financial planning. In fact, a lot of financial planning websites have actually, got into the robo-advisory service because they just need to automate their process using, AI. So this is already happening in India. Okay, so this is again, called Bodik blog, gives you advice on, then because finance, which is again, similar company. Investor, no commissions, exclusive fund selection, pay if it works. So, this is basically a rewards-based model where, you pay a very small amount and then based on the gains, you actually make, additional fee payment. This is, right? It's free until your investment cross 50,000. For India, 50,000 is like a big amount, right? So then you have 5 Paisa, which is very similar. Angel broking is a traditional broker who got into this. Okay, so this sort of covers most of what we do. Questions? We have some time, so we can probably answer questions.
We're saying the small investors actually make loss because they pay more to the agents. So your suggestion is to keep it in longer fund, is it? Exchange, like traded fund?
No, actually, small investors, the problem with small investors is that, they are either salaried or they are running small businesses, right? So yeah, they're busy. They don't have the time to read through and understand everything. And also, the financial education level is also a problem, right? So, so what really happens is, these people should outsource this to somebody. So that's what we normally do, right? Then when we go to a doctor and then, you don't understand this whole thing. So let them, figure out, what's wrong with it. So we have specialists, but finance is the most important thing in your life, right? I mean, what happens to you after you retire or whatever, right? So, so far, all these facilities are available only to very large investors, right? Or institutional investors. Only those people got the benefit. Portfolio management. For example, I have my friends who are, my juniors and, fund managers, who pass out from me, etc. These guys charge so much, you won't believe. So, their annual income is like 10, 15 crores, that kind of thing. It's just fee income. Okay. So small investors can't pay that kind of thing, right? So you want the best advice. At the same time, you don't want to pay too much to these guys, right? So, so that is the, advantage of, robo-advisory services, right? It's good for the small investors. So otherwise, what happens? Somebody gives a broker will call and then say, "Boss, the stock is going to go up in price." So then you lose money. I know a lot of people who lose money because they don't understand. Everybody is now. One of my aunts, electrician, has said to her, she's retired. She is a professor, in a college, and she has nothing to do with finance. Actually, he's a sociology professor. So her electrician said, invest in Ethereum. Okay, so you can buy Ethereum. So she asked me, so you're doing fintech and tell me what is Ethereum. I said, don't do that and don't listen to your electrician's advice, for financial services, right? So Barbara tells you the stock is going to go up, etc. So, a standardized, a large company behind, so Birla Group says that, okay, invest in this company, then you can probably do that, right? So that is the advantage. And then because everybody's got a smartphone today, you can track everything, and then you can take well considered opinion, and then you're not paying too much fees. So that's really the advantage, right? Okay, any other questions? Because we have some more time, I think. Dr. Kavita? Yeah.
Yeah, Austin, I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so is there any study that has compared the returns based on the traditional investments like SIP or mutual funds and the robo robo-advisory service? Is there any better, are there better returns from this robo-advisory service?
Okay. Actually, no, tell you frankly, no. See, that's because of this. Okay. So what robo-advisory does is, it's a standard thing across, a large number of customers. Okay. So robo-advisory's objective is to minimize losses and frauds and make sure that, so, but if you're an active investor and, you're knowledgeable and then you want to take advantage of the market, even very small movement, etc., that gives you higher returns, obviously, right? So, so then you're a professional investor who use, more tools, and you have the time and energy and the knowledge to understand, etc. So only those guys will obviously make more money in the market. For example, if I sit and manage only my portfolio, I'll spend, research, I'll read all these. So, but portfolio, these guys don't do that. This is a standard minimum. So
suppose I'm not conversant with the stock market and all. I don't know how to do it. I just invest in a mutual fund, right? And,
no, but you're taking a risk with the mutual fund, right? Because see, mutual fund is subject to, they always tell you that, subject to market risks and things like that, right? So obviously, right? So that is one level of diversification. See, you're right. Instead of investing in single stock, for example, and take that risk, suppose the company closed down, the promoter runs away, etc., you lose the entire money, right? Instead, mutual fund is actually better because they have a diversified portfolio, right? But sometimes, you have infrastructure in mutual funds. See, mutual funds have also become very specialized now. Some mutual funds invest only in certain industries and, and so on. We are talking about both the ETF, exchange funds and mutual funds. Now, the point is, so that gives you a certain level of protection. But it's still, you're exposed to the market, downturns, even in mutual funds. But in a robo-advisory services, what happens, they actually take your, see, mutual funds don't manage your portfolio. They give you an investment option. But robo-advisory services is actually, manage your entire portfolio, So you might want to invest not just in mutual funds. Mutual funds invest in stocks and they invest in certain industry, diversified, right? But then robo-advisory services actually tells you, oh, this much you should keep in cash, okay, this much in debt, this much in equity. And within equity, they will actually select this mutual fund, this particular exchange rate, and so on. So, portfolio, mutual fund don't give you portfolio advice. They only, diversify your equity investments. So your risk is much, higher in a mutual fund alone, kind of model, because you are still in charge of your portfolio management in that case. But in robo-advisory services, they take your entire portfolio and then allocate based on the, risk profile you have. And then they allocate in different, they might invest in mutual fund also, but then there's only a small portion of that, depending on your risk profile. And then they also keep a watch on, what is happening. And then something extraordinary happens in the market, they immediately adjust it automatically using software. So, you might miss out on something, even your mutual fund manager might miss something. But then, this, because, software handles this, they can actually, immediately rebalance and remove exposure to a particular asset, etc.
Can I say that since robo services has got lesser risk as compared to mutual funds, so in that case, returns from robo services will be less as compared to the mutual funds, right?
Yeah, yes. Because, so their robo-advisory service idea is to protect the investors and make sure that, you get, minimum level of, risk actually. So what? Please go on.
Yeah. Yes. My second question is that usually, all the fund managers, right? They are quite sensitive to maintain their reputation in the market, and usually at the end of the quarter or the end of the month, they book the profits, right? And it happens, right? But what about these robo services? Do they do such kind of thing, or they simply follow the advice from the algorithm.
Okay, so different models, as I told you, many follow. Now, if you take a standard robot visit service, once they find your risk profile, then they allocate it and then forget about it. Okay, unless an extraordinary event that happens, they touch the portfolio. Otherwise, they don't touch it at all. At the end of the year, they just rebalance it. So, what really happens is they take care of extraordinary risks that happen, they immediately change the portfolio. Otherwise, they don't touch it at all. But then your regular portfolio, manager will actively manage it actually, right? But the advantage with the regular portfolio manager is that he might give you a hint about, a good opportunity that comes along. Robot vision services will not do that.
Yeah, that answers my question. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, sir, I have a question here.
Yes.
So last year, Franklin Templeton Mutual Fund has closed 4 to 5 of its debt fund schemes. So
Okay.
if we apply it through a advisory service, robo-advisory service, or through a portfolio manager, and if I am an investor who has invested through these services, then is there a possibility that I can avoid the losses which I have made through these services or these fund houses?
Okay. So this is a continuation of what we explained to the other question. See, there are different levels of control that you can take in your investments. For example, you can take full time, I'll only do this and I will do the evaluation. I won't even go to mutual funds, but I will go to the stocks directly and then invest. Okay. That is the one extreme approach. That is what a lot of, top finance experts would probably do, right? But then the other end is the robo advisory services where you give away control to the, automated portfolio advisor who will do everything for you. You don't really care where they invest. You won't even know whether they invest in Franklin Templeton or any other fund, etc. Okay, so they take care of those kind of things. You're protected completely from all the fluctuations like the ones you mentioned. Okay, so you don't have that problem at all. But the only problem with that approach is that if you are a very sophisticated investor, you know a lot about the markets, etc. You want to take advantage of any new opportunity that comes in, then it is not for you. So this is for Janta who can who can outsource this and then forget about it actually. So sophisticated a financial investor, then you lose out on the upside actually. But then there's no downside here. So you won't even know whether they invested in Franklin Templeton or not. Okay, and second thing, they will see these guys watch the market very carefully. So they will know if your fund is closing down, if something is happening somewhere, they get advanced information. I'm not talking about inside information. I'm saying constantly observing the market and being in that environment. They know, right? So they can take care of your book. So that is the advantage of. So the verdict is this. Okay, so if you are not a finance person, if you are not financially sophisticated, you want, for example, I'm going to retire and then, I got this money, which I need to spend for my daughter's wedding, etc. Then I don't want to really take, any risk, right? I will rather trust a standard robot advisory services. So then my downside is protected. That's really the upside of this.
Sir, is there any percentage which is charged by these portfolio managers or robo services?
Okay, you're talking about the human portfolio managers. They charge you FD amounts. Okay, but these robo advisory services have a very standard charge. They don't charge you for transactions. They don't charge you for intermediate opportunities. They just charge a flat annual, $5,000, $10,000, that kind of thing. So this is very useful for a lot of people who are not very financially savvy, right? So
okay, thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, any other question, comments? Yeah.
I think there's a question from Valli ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Please.
Are the robotic services based on behavioral theories? We have some people saying behavioral finance. So ma'am is asking these theories are incorporated into the robo services?
Actually, okay. So, so let's understand, this behavioral, finances, whether, it's still hot right now. Okay. So, see, this was the emergence of behavioral finance it predates the emergence of social media. Okay. So we wanted to start looking only at fundamental analysis, only technical analysis. What about people's sentiments and their habits and behaviors and things like that? So does it have personality variables, etc.? Does it have any so Daniel Kahneman did a lot of work on this, etc. But the point is today, machine learning and AI, as I told you, when I talked about quantitative investing, we take into account even the sentiments of the market, because the personality variables all show up in the tweet or in your Facebook post. So immediately somebody says, "Oh, I heard the news that Hindustan Lever lost this contract. I heard through the grapevine." That comes as a tweet. Okay. So our quantitative investment model immediately takes into account that and then incorporates that into the decision. So the answer is yes. Robot research services takes into account all the variables, including behavioral variables, because at the investor level we are looking at the risk profile. We are when you ask questions, we also ask questions like what is your risk appetite, what is your attitude towards cryptocurrencies, can we invest in Bitcoin? No, don't do that. Then I know that your risk averse, for that kind of thing. So can you put money in the B2B lending platform? You say yes, I'm okay with that. So depending on this question, see, the global research services are not really very evolved and sophisticated. We've just got started. So that is why there is a human intervention always in right. But slowly, what will happen when the numbers become very large, and then the older customers come in because they have money to invest, etc. Then there will be an ideal situation where everything is taken care of in the portfolio itself. But AI takes into account your behavioral issues as well, because it's just data as far as we are concerned. Sentiments. If somebody says, how was the restaurant experience? You say it was okay, but if you ask me, should I go again there? I may not go now. Something like this was very difficult to interpret. So are you saying yes, favorable, or no? It's not favorable, right? You're saying okay, and then you're saying I won't go again, right? Now we used to have a problem with this kind of messages earlier. Now today, after deep learning, we are able to even understand what is the overall impact of this particular system, because we have now very sophisticated natural language processing tools available, so we can easily find out whether in fact even in videos we can look at facial expression and then find out whether this person is in for or against. So sometimes you can say yes while meaning no, and vice versa, right? So today NLP is sophisticated enough, and you have CNN, convolution neural networks, etc., was very sophisticated to take into account all these factors actually. Okay. Any other question, comments? Yeah. So this was not very technical. I didn't want to go into the basic AI model, etc. I thought that as a first session we should talk about applications first, than the technology itself.
Okay, so if there are no more questions, then I think we can wind up the session.
Absolutely.
I hope all your doubts, I hope all the doubts of our participants are very thoughtfully cleared by Austin sir. And so now it's time for us to thank Austin sir for his wonderful session. Sir, you have given us so many inputs, especially from the fintech point of view, WealthTech point of view, like crowdfunding, and then algo trading, peer-to-peer lending, robo advisory services, and so on. So I think today all our participants have had really good insights about these concepts and how these are practically being used and what are the different business use cases here. So thank you, Austin sir. Once again, it was wonderful session from you. You have truly not disappointed us at all. It was very, very energetic and it was very informative, quoting lot of examples like Indiegogo, Kickstarter, and Charles Schwab. So various other examples. And so I think it would have been very interesting for our participants. Already we are getting a lot of comments here on the chat box that the session was very useful and informative. So thank you, Austin sir, for that wonderful session.
Pleasure.
On behalf of College of Management, yes.
Sure.
On behalf of our
so
Dean and College of Management, we thank you so much, sir, for being with us here.
Thank you, Dr. Kavita, and the management, and also, all the participants, because, this is a subject that most of you already are familiar with, you are investors,
Actually,
you understand. Yeah.
yes, sir. Actually, we have introduced a subject on technology in finance for our third semester students as a finance elective.
Oh, excellent.
We have introduced all these concepts in that subject so that our students, they'll have a feel of how technology is totally disrupting, different areas in finance.
Yeah, correct.
So,
absolutely. I think at the faculty level, conceptual understanding is good, but probably at the students level, we need to get into the actual technology and do some hands-on stuff.
Yes.
Right. So, okay.
Yes,
So thank you so much. You've been, such a lovely participants, and thank you for all the questions. And thank you. All the best. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.